Hey, welcome to episode number 7 of season 2 of the Selah Leaders podcast. My name is Nick Newman, and I want to give you a special welcome to today's episode. We're so honored that you chose to hang out with us. Do us a favor, don't do this journey alone. If this message or this type of content impacts you in any way, do us a favor, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Be sure to send it to somebody maybe in your family or on your team. We believe it's going to make a big difference in your life. I'm here today with our podcast guide, Darren.
What's going on? It's good to be here. I mean, always, but
yeah.
I pulled a t-shirt out of the retro level of the closet this morning. It's not that retro, but it goes back a couple of years.
It is. Battle Ready was a men's conference. It was a one-night event that we hosted, and we didn't actually print t-shirts for it. We did like a what's the name of the print?
I don't remember
like
either.
A print
Teespring
space,
or something
Teespring.
like that.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
That basically you could just order a shirt. I think only 2 people did it. So Darren has almost an original. It's an original art piece.
I would consider it an original for sure. I mean, it's a cool design though. It's a good graphic. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, and in the eyes of the Lord, you're an original too.
Hey,
so,
I receive that.
Come on. Well, listen. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about relationships.
Yeah.
Primarily the relationships that you have with other people.
Yeah.
And I think there are healthy relationships and there are unhealthy relationships. And so rather than just, I think what I found in leadership is if you approach every relationship equally, you will be significantly disappointed in the results that you get.
Yeah.
So relationships have to be approached almost systematically or strategically, because the way you interact with people is going to be different based on the level of engagement that you're at, based on the pace you run, based on your sphere of influence and your position of leadership.
Right.
And so I want to talk about 4 healthy relationships that we've got to have.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the first one of those is, I call it the crowd. And this is the relationship that you have with the people who you're called to serve. For Jesus, this would be like the groups of people who would just come to listen to hear him speak.
People like the feeding of the 5,000, all the people that showed up.
Yeah, so in that story specifically, right, there are different levels of relationships you have in the whole thing. You have the relationship that he has with the disciples, right? That's a group of 12. Then you have the relationship that he has with the 5,000. Most scholars believe it's going to be
More
between 12 to 20, right? Because until we get to Acts chapter 2, women and children weren't counted, which, by the way, is just something really cool, that when the Spirit comes, now all of a sudden women and children
really cool.
are counted, right?
Yeah.
We could dive into that a whole different day, but so in those moments, like, there's a difference between the two.
Right.
How you relate with the crowd is really important, because they are the people that you're called to serve. And it's not that you look down on them or anything like that, but there's a big difference between people who are spectators in your life versus people who speak into your life.
Yeah, so good.
And I think one of the primary indicators of unhealth in the area of the crowd, if you have an unhealthy relationship with the crowd, you will get stuck in people pleasing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so now your kind of motivation for serving is no longer what can I do to serve you? It's how can I serve you in a way that causes you to value me more? And I was just teaching at a different church this past weekend, one of my favorite places to preach on the planet. But one of the things I've been learning, I've been doing a deep dive into pride lately, studying it. People pleasing is still rooted in pride.
Absolutely.
It's a repackaged way of me wanting to have you on my side.
Right.
The reason why we want to people please is not because we need something from them. What we do, we need their validation.
Right. We want validation. We want affirmation. Yeah.
We want approval.
Yeah.
And so when I have an unhealthy relationship with the crowd, my primary motivation in serving them or doing life with them is just that they would stay around long enough, or they would stay around more, or they would see me as a good leader, or they would see me as valuable. And as a leader, there are going to be people who you're called to serve for a reason, a season, and a lifetime.
Yeah.
There are going to be people who come and go. I mean, in the 10 years that we've been doing ministry, like, there are very few people that haven't left. Right? People leave every now and then, and there are people who come and they say, hey, listen, we'll never leave you. I rarely trust that at this stage of the game, just because I know that, like, it's not just a possibility, it's a reality.
Yeah.
People are going to leave, but they're not my people.
Right.
They belong to the Lord.
Right.
So I think unhealthy relationships with the crowd look like people pleasing, while a healthy relationship with the crowd views them as a blessing, not a burden.
Yeah, come on.
If we're not careful, even in leadership, when we have unhealthy relationships with the crowd, we look at people as just a burden to us. They are not a burden. They're the reason why we exist.
Yeah.
Like, they're not an inconvenience.
Right.
I don't have to serve them. I get to serve them.
That's right.
Right? They're a blessing. Ministry, it drives me nuts when people say, like, man, I'd love ministry if it wasn't for people.
That's what it's all about.
What would there be?
Yeah.
There wouldn't be anything without people.
Yeah.
Because it's always been about people. It will always be about people. People are actually a blessing.
Yeah.
It's a blessing and a privilege to serve them.
Yeah, it's all about people. And I think one of the things that I always go back to is, like, Jesus came to serve. He is the ultimate example of what a servant looks like and what it means to be a servant leader. But one of the things that I always go back to too is, like, the people that are put under our care, I look at that as, hey, we have to steward them well. We have to steward them as gifts from God, as blessings in our lives. And so, the crowd, hey, like, what are we doing to steward leading them well and ultimately, pointing them back toward Jesus?
Yeah, 100%. So you need a healthy relationship with the crowd. And I think when you have a healthy relationship with the crowd, you don't have to live for their approval. Like, you don't have to wake up in the morning saying to yourself, if they're for me, then I'll keep doing this.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. You're called to lead.
Yeah.
And the leadership and the call that God has on your life is not conditional to the approval of man.
Yeah.
That's why Paul would say, if I'm trying to please both man and God, I'm not going to be able to do it.
Right.
I've got to pick, do I do this to please people, or do I do this to please the Lord? And the answer is, we do this to please the Lord. And so healthy relationships with the crowd are really important.
Yeah, I think the other thing too that I was just thinking about as you were talking through this is, I think one of the other things, especially for leaders of churches, especially teaching pastors of churches, if you're on that side of people pleasing, you may pick message topics and, specifically teach on specific topics that people are going to agree on, versus maybe some of the more controversial ones that we're also called to teach on, but we may avoid because they could be a more hot button topic. And so making sure that, again, that we're stewarding, those blessings well means that we're speaking truth no matter what.
Well, and I think there's a tension in that. I think for a little while, I swung too far the other direction. I went from, like, caring about what people think to I didn't care at all about what people thought. And it wasn't this, like, false humility. It was genuine. I did not care what you thought. I think there's a really healthy middle ground when you're leading, because if not, you become a pain point to the very people you're called to serve.
Yeah. You don't want to be a stumbling block.
No. And so I think, when I think about my role in teaching, I've had to learn to just, like, I'm not going to avoid topics just because someone might disagree or it might make people uncomfortable. I'm also not going to run after topics just because I know they're hot button issues and it will light a fire, like it'll make people mad.
Yeah.
Because I think there are, especially in the world we live in today, where I'm seeing a lot of leaders, they're swinging ends of the pendulum. Some people are avoiding topics because they feel like people will be upset, and other people, the only thing they talk about are the things they know are going to upset people.
Yeah.
And I think if you really want to lead, you're going to have to lead in a healthy spot from the middle of that.
That's good.
The second relationship, I think we need friends.
Come on.
It is a myth that you have to do life alone as a leader. I also, like, it bugs me a lot. I talk to pastors all around the world, and they'll say things like, "Oh, it's lonely at the top," which is not untrue.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's only as lonely as you make it.
Yeah, so true.
And when you think about friends, for me, I do have some friendships inside of our organization. But these are people that you would enjoy hanging out with, even outside of serving or outside of your organization. It doesn't mean Darren and I, we hang out quite a bit.
Yeah.
More when my travel schedule is not the way it has been in these last couple months.
Yeah.
So we hang out quite a bit. It's not that when we hang out, we never talk work or we never talk church or nonprofit or business or any of that stuff. We talk about that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But when you look at friendships, they're people that you actually enjoy spending time with. And I think, truthfully, the longer that I've done ministry and leadership, at some point this will probably change. But in the early days, I used to just build teams with whoever was available. The reality is, if I won't spend time with you outside of a Sunday, I'm not going to put you in a position of leadership. Because I'm a relational leader. We're gonna do life together. And if I don't really want to do life with you, that's going to make leadership real hard.
Yeah. No, that's a great call out. And I think, from the way I look at it is, our friends ultimately, there was a pastor that I used to be led by, who, and by the way, I have nothing against that pastor. He's still a very dear friend.
If
but
you have
I
beef,
moved,
Darren, go fix it.
But I was going to say, it just sounded weird that I said used to be led by, but previously led by, who said, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future."
Yeah.
These are people you want to surround yourself with because they're people that ultimately they make you better. They're watching out for you. They're covering your weaknesses, and I think that's really key. Is being able to build relationships, friendships with people who want to have your best interests in every situation, in every circumstance, and that's ultimately what those friendships are.
Yeah, in each one of these categories, we're going to talk about health and unhealth.
Yeah,
and I think one of the things that I've observed is that when your friendships are not healthy, it's typically because they reflect your past more than they reflect your future.
Yeah.
When the only thing you can talk about with your friend group is where you used to be instead of the direction that you're heading, you are on the fast track to building a museum rather than living with momentum.
So good.
And some of the healthiest relationships I have, we talk about the past. We laugh about the past, things that we've done or experienced together. But we are leaning to the future, kind of moving in the same direction and watching, what is God doing in this season? What am I dreaming of? What do I want to see? It's not always just where we've been, but you've got to have relationships and friendships where you are talking through where you're going, because the people who are closest to you should be able to point out your blind spots and say, well, listen, if that's where you want to go, here are some things that I think might stop you from getting there.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, it looked like you had something to say and to add there. So, unhealthy, I think it reflects your past more than your future. But when they're healthy, you'll have people that you enjoy doing life with.
Right.
And when I think of enjoying doing life together, we're not just talking about people who you get work done with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I get work done with.
Yeah.
But enjoying life is like, well, hey, let's go out. Let's go have dinner.
Yeah.
Like, let's go hang, or, we've done some vacations together.
Go sit down, have a cup of coffee, and just talk about life, talk about things you're challenged with, things you're struggling with. Like, yeah, that's part of being in a relationship, in a friendship with someone. I think it seems silly, but like, even, just thinking about it from a standpoint of, healthy and successful marriages, you're talking about life with each other. You're truly doing life with one another. Friendships, obviously there's a little bit of a departure from what a marriage looks like, hopefully.
Yeah, come on.
In a good one. Yeah.
There needs to be.
But I think, friendships are similar, right? We have to do life together. Mm-hmm. Let's make sure that, that we are keeping up with each other and understanding what makes each other tick, but also, hey, where are some of the things that we're really struggling with, and how can we be praying for one another? You're connecting at just a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about crowds. Mm-hmm. We talked about friends. The next two, I think, are vitally important for leaders, and they're often overlooked. The third one is you need a healthy relationship with a mentor.
Yeah.
I believe every single leader needs a mentor in their life.
Yeah.
Sometimes those mentors are people who work above you in the organization you're a part of, but oftentimes mentors need to exist outside of the organization that you're a part of, because you need an external perspective to be able to see what you've become desensitized to internally. And a mentor is a person who is going to invest into you. There's somebody that is further along in a very specific area than you are. I don't like general mentors of like, man, that person looks successful. Let me just go and like have them mentor me in what it looks like to be successful. I don't think that's effective.
Yeah.
I think getting specific with your mentors is really important. Like, man, that leader has a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
I want to make sure my marriage is as healthy as it can be. I want them to invest into me.
Right.
Or this individual lives with tremendous financial freedom.
Yeah.
And I see them be able to say yes to things that I couldn't dream of saying yes to right now.
Yeah.
I want them to mentor me in this area. This leader is over here releasing books at a pace faster than John Maxwell.
Yeah.
And so, like I want to chat with them and learn from them. And I think the more specific you can get with mentors, the better, because you need people who are investing into you that are further along than you are.
Yeah, that's so good. And I know for me, I mean, that was something I struggled with for a long time. One of the biggest things I think is also important too is to recognize. So just to give you the example, when I was working at a previous job, I was working with a lot of people and bringing them along on the technology side of things and really helping them understand what we do. But one of the things that I acknowledged was, hey, I'm pouring out a lot, but I have nobody pouring into me.
Right.
And that's something I think we all need to recognize that, hey, if there's nobody pouring into us, we're not learning for the trajectory that we need to be moving towards, and we're not moving forward. And so in that situation, I actually decided at that point, hey, I think it's actually in my best interest to look for something different and to move on. But I think for every organization, it's going to look different. For every individual, it's going to look different. For a long time, I didn't have a mentor for, my role that I serve in at Propel. And recently that has shifted, and it's paid huge dividends for me personally, because I've now been able to see, okay, here's somebody else who is on the same trajectory, we're headed in the same direction, but they're just a little bit further ahead than I am. And that allows them to pour into me so that I can continue to invest in our team.
Yeah. And I couldn't be your worship and production mentor, because on the vocal side of things, that's not where the Lord gifted me, Yeah. But so I think we need healthy relationships with mentors. when that relationship is unhealthy, I think you can identify it because your motive for doing well will be either to gain their approval, or it's envy driven of like, well, if I just do what they did, if I just followed then I can have what they have.
Right.
God has a unique plan for each person's life, and you don't have to live with envy.
Yeah.
You don't have to live with jealousy. God has enough for you and them at the same time. Their blessing does not hinder his blessing on you.
That's right.
And so I think when those mentor relationships, and I've seen this happen in my own life of I've had mentors pour in and invest into me, and my motivation for doing well stopped being getting better at what God called me to do, and it was, well, if I do well, then I know that they'll approve of me. That I'll have their stamp. I'll have their, it's approval, right? We're back into people pleasing,
right?
And so unhealthy, I think that will kind of be your motivation with mentors of, I want to prove you well. Or if you've had a mentor that told you couldn't do it, one of the most unhealthy motivations I've ever seen and still see today is this desire to prove someone wrong. Where your motivation for doing well is no longer about you doing well. It's all about proving everybody else wrong that you could actually do it. That's a miserable way to live. But when that relationship's healthy, you get to glean from somebody else's experience. You get to implement things based on your individual giftings.
Right.
One of the greatest lessons I ever learned from a mentor was eat the meat, spit out the bones. You don't have the responsibility to implement everything in your life that a mentor presents to you, but it's really beneficial for you to go, okay, based on the way that I'm built, based on the way that I'm wired.
Yeah, that's good.
How do I implement the advice that they've given me? Because, and you and I run into this sometimes. If you come to me and ask me how I would handle a problem, I will give you a very Nick Newman way to handle that problem.
And that's because God has wired you as Nick Newman, not as Darren Zook.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I have zero problem with confrontation. I have no problem telling you what I think. I will walk in a room. I will share truth. We will leave smiling. Right. People don't hate me when we do it, which is cool. But then I've watched other people on our team do the same thing I do and get
different reactions.
Not the same results at all, because everybody's different. So I think when you have a healthy relationship with a mentor, you get to implement based on your unique wiring and design, not theirs.
So good. Take us through number 4.
Number 4 is a healthy relationship with a mentee. So you need a mentor, but you also need a mentee. And a mentee is somebody that you are intentionally investing into. Even if you look at like a biblical model, you've got Paul, and Paul has Timothy. Right? You as a leader need to be pouring in and developing a leader. And I would encourage you to be developing somebody that can do what you do down the road. Oftentimes when we look for somebody to pour into, we're trying to replace ourselves for where we are, not where we started. Like look for somebody that's eager, that's available, that is hungry to learn and grow, and then pour into them and invest into them. And I do that with people on our team. I give them, I would say, mostly unrestricted access. Like, I'm doing these meetings, come with me. I'm traveling here to speak, come with me. And we're debriefing when we get in the car. I just got done preaching for a leadership gathering in Michigan, and one of our staff guys went to Michigan with me. As soon as I got done teaching a leadership event, we got in the car and I was like, all right, what stood out? What can I do different? How do I get better? Now, I'm his mentor. But at the same time, he's getting to learn how to think like that, how how to respond. Hey, when they ask this question, why'd you go this direction? Well, because here's what they were really asking.
Right.
And you get to teach those things. So you need a mentee in your life.
Yeah. And I think you said it best. You have to have somebody who they're eager to get started in what you were doing. And I even think about that now, just thinking about, the way that we do ministry. We always try to take somebody with us. There's always that opportunity to take somebody with you. And maybe you haven't identified who that person is yet. Right. That's okay. Allow God to work in your church. Allow him to work in the crowd, and ultimately to help surface those people to you. Because more than likely, those people are there. You just don't know you don't know they are who they are yet. Yeah. And sometimes it's them getting rooted and getting planted that ultimately allows you to see what they're able to step into and cultivate that.
Yeah. And I think because we're kingdom leaders, we love Jesus, right? And we do stuff in the church, we do stuff in the business world and kind of everywhere else. I think it's really important for us to not just pick people based on their track record or current performance. Yeah. It's one of the things that's been blowing my mind about Luke chapter 5 recently. I read that story all the time. It's where Jesus calls Peter to be a disciple. But if I was going to build my team, I'm probably going to build it with people who are able to do their current job well first. Yeah. And when Jesus meets Peter, he's sitting on the shore cleaning his nets because he caught nothing. Yeah. A professional fisherman can't even catch fish. Yeah. And Jesus is like, that's who I want on my team.
Yeah. Well, he was invested too. And I think that's the other big thing. Like, he was invested in what he was doing. He was dedicated to the cause. He knew at the end of the day, if I work hard enough at this, if I do all the right things, I should be able to yield the results that I'm expecting. Yeah. And so he knew, hey, Peter's 100% invested at the same time.
Yeah. So I think it's important, for us to not just go, oh man, they're crushing it in X area. Right. Boom, that's the person. Because sometimes we get too infatuated with gifts and we don't look enough at character. And gifts will give you a platform, but character is what sustains it.
100%.
So if you have an unhealthy relationship with a mentee, you'll allow pride to creep in. You'll allow their compliments to become your source of joy. Your head will get really big, like, oh, I have these people who think I'm awesome. But when it's healthy, you'll actually help somebody become who they were created to be. Yeah. And I think that's my favorite part about leadership. My favorite part about leadership is that we don't have the capacity to give people gifts. Yeah. We actually have the opportunity to help them discover what God put inside of them from the very beginning.
That's right.
We have the opportunity to help them uncover the way they were uniquely designed. And then my hope is that the people I lead go further, faster than I've ever gone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, dead on. I mean, that's it at the end of the day, is I want to see people take next steps that ultimately get them way beyond where I am today. That's what leadership is. So those 4 key relationships: the crowd, your friends, your mentor, and your mentee. Fantastic teaching for today. So every episode we do our leader submitted question. And these are some of my favorites because we've unpacked lots of fun topics as part of these. But today's question, how do you find someone to mentor you?
So, I actually don't think it's as hard as we make it out to be. Again, when we talked earlier, like, instead of going general, get specific. But I have like, give you an example. There is a local pastor who I have seen write a lot of books, and he is producing them at a rapid rate. That's something that's on my heart, right?
Yeah.
I have like 3 or 4 books right now that are sitting fully finished, just need editing, but editing drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And so I want to learn from him.
Yeah.
So I sent him a Facebook message that said, hey, I've noticed that you are killing it in this specific area. You're releasing so many books. Can I buy you coffee? and pick your brain for an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think relationships like that start out as mentors. They start out as conversations.
Right.
And so that's the starting place. How do you find it? You go out to coffee with somebody, you pick their brain, you ask them questions, you learn from them, and you honor their time.
Yeah.
And then you ask them, hey, is there any way we can meet again? And you begin to develop a relationship that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the starting place of get specific and then just invite them to coffee, invite them to lunch, pay for it, and just see what God does.
Yeah. I mean, it's networking at the end of the
Networking,
day. You're networking with other people. And I think the other big thing too, I know this was true for me, is, find people, especially on the ministry side of things, especially if you're a second chair leader, or you're another ministry area leader where you're leading, maybe it's missions or outreach or worship and production. Find other people in other churches who are doing those walks and establish relationships, network with them, build those relationships, because ultimately you all learn from each other. And in some cases they could be mentors, and in other cases it opens that door for a mentee.
Come on.
Yeah. So if you've got a leader submitted question, feel free to drop those in the comments of YouTube, or send them to us at info@selahleaders.com. Got anything else to close us out with today?
Nah, I know this has been a long episode.
Yeah.
I don't know what time it is. Normally we try and keep them around that 25-minute mark. I'm sure we've surpassed that. What are we at?
I think we're right at around 30.
Come on. That's not that bad.
No.
I must have looked at my clock at the wrong time. I was like, I think we're at 40 minutes now. But hey, no, it's been great.
Yeah.
And, it's always an honor to get to hang out and to chat leadership. And I mean, really, we want leaders to thrive and kill it. So keep those relationships healthy relationship with the crowd, healthy relationships with friends, a mentor, and a mentee. If this episode made a difference in your life, if you like the content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for checking out this month's episode of the Selah Leaders Podcast. Darren and I are so grateful that you chose to spend some time with us today to check it out. But do us a favor, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, comment, share it with a friend, family, or another leader in your life. It would truly make a huge difference.
Yeah, and if you'd like more information, jump over to selahleaders.com.